start off with, the first couple of pictures we've got are from the early days of your memories of Oxford. We've got one of the Manor Grounds, we have another one there as well. Just what are your memories when you see the old Manor Grounds?
Remember a good 6 foot drop from one end to the other. I remember an away end that wasn't covered, so when it rained the away fans used to get very wet. And I remember a wonderful team made of some very good individuals and a collective as well that played some really exciting football in front of what used to be a packed London Road and a packed stadium, and created a wonderful atmosphere that I was lucky to experience many times.
Yeah, family as well come to mind when you think of that?
Yeah, it does. It does. I've shared that stadium many times with different members of my family and experienced some really good games of football together.
The next 3 images are 3 people you would have watched at the Manor Grounds. Talk us through these guys.
Probably 3 of the best players to have ever played for our club, or arguably 3 of the best players to ever play for our club. So, 3 images I've got in front of me. I'm going with Matt Elliott, Paul Moody, and Joey Beecham. I remember Paul Moody being what I thought at the time as a young boy, about 8 foot tall, and used to push centre backs all over the place and score goals for fun. He had almost a partner in crime at centre back, and Matt Elliott, a very similar build, very scary looking defender to me as a young boy at the time, but someone that was so dominating inside his box and a leader, easily able to see a leader, but could also play. And then I don't think I've got enough words for Joey. I think anyone that's been fortunate to watch him play in Oxford United colours, for me he's the best player to ever put on a yellow shirt, and to see how exciting he was running down the wings here was very special, and I'm glad I was able to see that firsthand.
That's you as a supporter. The next 2 images is you starting to become associated with the club.
Oh wow.
You back in your younger days, how old were you in that one?
I have no idea, but I tell you what, yeah, I'll get some stick for that. I haven't seen that in a long, long time.
What is your early association then with the club? How early are we talking in these pictures?
2002 maybe, 2003 or 4. Yeah, off the top of my head, maybe as early as that. Yeah, and then amongst that first team staff. I always remember this one because Nick Merry, the chairman at the time, doesn't have any socks on. So, but no, I think when you look at that, it was a really good team. And then you look around the support staff that's there. You know, obviously Darren Patterson was in charge at the time, Jim Smith, Mickey Lewis, Alan Hodgkinson, Ken Ridley, Peter Rhodes-Brown, who's still here, and I could go on. But a really enjoyable time as what I was, a very young coach, being very well looked after by all those people I just mentioned and others. And what turned out to be the start of a very, very exciting journey to start with at this club.
You spoke about Mickey Lewis. The next 2 images, I'll leave them for you to describe what they mean to you. They mean a lot. This is a guy who's almost like a second father figure to me. He's without doubt had the biggest influence on my coaching career, and someone that if you could replicate half the qualities he had as a person, you'd be a great guy. And yeah, I loved my time working with Mick. I think the way, you know, his knowledge of football was second to none. But I think if you speak to all the people that are fortunate to cross his path, whether he coached them or otherwise, you won't meet a nicer man in football. And I know that said a lot, but this guy, from the way he made you feel, the way he involved you, the way he allowed you to be yourself, and the way he just looked after you, and looked after me over a long, long journey. Yeah, I can't put that into words. That's a very, very special person in my life. And then, in the age of 29, you made the decision to leave Oxford, which we'll see in the next 2, and you move over to New Zealand. What comes to mind when you think back of your time in New Zealand?
I still call to an extent New Zealand home.
It's a country where I went to. It seems crazy when I look back at it now. I went there as a 29-year-old. Didn't know anybody, and yeah, ended up living in a really, really nice place with a very different culture to what I was used to, very different way of working and living, but one where I was welcomed with like almost open arms, but somewhere as a foreign person going in as a guest in somebody else's country, was made to feel so at home so quickly by the people in that country. And again, you talk about being fortunate to be looked after. When I landed, I very quickly ended up working under a head coach called Ernie Merrick. He had very similar traits to Mickey. He was an old Scottish PE teacher at the time, but he was a head coach at Wellington. And without realising, over a 3-year journey, he allowed both Chris Greenacre, who was the other assistant coach, and myself at the time, he developed us as assistant coaches to almost prime and prepare us to be a head coach without us realising that. And that came into a really good use when he stood down and they put me in charge for the 2/3 of the season. So forever grateful to him as well, but a very special time in that first 3 years in Wellington.
And the youngest coach in A-League history at the time when you were appointed, did that come as a bit of a shock to you in your journey as a coach?
Doesn't quite look like that in this picture, does it? I think I look older there than I do now.
Is that coaching what it does?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Yeah, youngest coach, I think that's still the case now. But again, you're trusted. You like to think that you show what you can do, and then you trust people, or people put their trust in you and they give you the opportunity because you've shown them enough. And there's people like Rob Morrison, who's the chairman, is still the chairman now, and Sean Gill, who is the other guy in that picture sitting next to me on the bench, that were very good and entrusted me to take that club at that time. And again, it gave me some wonderful experiences that have helped me again on my coaching journey.
We've then got 3 from your next job, still in New Zealand. What comes to mind in these pictures? Because you've had some really good success there.
Yes, this, I don't know how much time we've got on this, but this 3-year journey when I went back to New Zealand to take over the national teams, we almost had a blank canvas to work from. We spent a lot of time trying to put an identity around what we felt New Zealand football players could do and how we wanted them to play, and it was a lot more of an expansive type of football, similar to some of the stuff we're hopefully seeing now at Oxford, but it wasn't a game that they had been playing up until that point. But we also involved a lot of the cultural and indigenous work or practices that are specific to New Zealand, and I met a wonderful person called Christian Penny at High Performance Sport New Zealand that helped us integrate indigenous and Maori practice into our football environment, that created a real greater sense of themselves and a real clear identity about who we were and what we were and what it meant to represent your country. So when people spoke about wearing the fern and what it meant to wear the fern, it wasn't just surface level. They had real deep meaning behind that, but that really aided what turned into a 3-year journey, a playing style that really developed over that time, an environment that really developed, and a playing group that really ended up driving that both on and off the field and established themselves on what ended up being a World Cup and the Olympics, into some wonderful football. And the amount of them that have gone on to play at really high levels now is wonderful to see. And that country and the senior team now in particular that have got a lot of these young players now playing for them, they're in for a really, really good future.
In the next couple of images we'll see the moves you make thereafter, New Zealand, and we've heard you speak a lot about your time in Australia, your time in India, but what we saw in New Zealand, what we see in these clubs as well, is that you've brought winning cultures everywhere that you've been so far. What has been the biggest learning experience for you going to all of these different places but also winning at them as well?
That you go far further with everybody than you would ever do by yourself. And what I mean by that is, you know, I've always, wherever I've gone in any of these images you've shown me, I've been a very young coach working with older players. I've often not been experienced in those leagues, but what I have really tried to develop is the understanding of working with people, utilising the skill sets of others, whether it be players or staff, the collaboration of how important it's not just the players or the staff, but the direction and the identity of what it is we're trying to do and how we want to get there. But more importantly, what each individual has to do to play their role and understand their role within that. And in each of those environments, both in New Zealand, now in Australia, so look at these pictures, and then going on to India in particular, the bringing together of that, so you have to have a very clear plan as a head coach what you want to do, but it's how you bring people together to aid and really utilise the skill set of everyone, which takes you far further than a head coach could ever take you.
Mm. That then leads us on to Oxford. After that, you're unveiled at the club. Just talk us through what it felt like when the call came in, what was going through your mind, but then that moment where you decided this was opportunity for you and to stand there with the scarf.
Yeah, look, a lot more tanned there in the 38-degree heat that I've come from into. Look, I'd spent 4 years working at City Football Group, firstly in Melbourne and then in India. The journey in India had been 2.5 years long, and I was brought into the Indian club under the CFG banner to implement a CFG way of doing things, both off of the field and on. And we'd had some really good success doing that to build the club for success in the short term, but also set out to achieve sustained success in the long term. We'd also brought in a playing style that is now there to be seen. The idea was that if you were to turn the TV on, you'd be able to say that's a CFG club, not necessarily Mumbai, but the recognition we couldn't play like Man City, but the principles about what we do and how we do it, you'd be able to very clearly see regardless of the badge that was on the shirt. So we'd achieved we won the league, we won the league unbeaten, we played some really good football and we broke some records, we broke a lot of records, but it almost felt like what we'd set out to achieve we kind of had. So then an opportunity or opportunities presented themselves to, certainly in the English Football League, come back, and you kind of weren't quite the right ones at the time, and that was a couple of months before this opportunity came up here at Oxford. And when I spoke to the club, or when the club spoke to me, the vision that they set out, how they wanted to achieve that vision and what they were looking to do, and wanting someone to work with them to take and help them get there, really closely aligned with how I work, really closely aligned with how I want to coach and what I want to do in my coaching career as well. And the two pretty much fitted perfectly hand in hand. And the fact it was my hometown club, it wasn't a deciding factor, but it's nice to come back to. But I come back here as a head coach that's gone away to try and upskill myself to come back and progress my career. And the fact that it ended up being at my hometown club that the core came from, it makes it a little bit more special.
Mm. I think in the next image we'll see one of you and Sam Long on one of the next ones. Must be quite nice though when you do return and after 10 years away and you see old faces and you've got a closer connection to people who for so long you may have lost touch with.
Sam I coached as a 9-year-old. I remember him first trialling here at the club when I was taking the younger age groups a long time ago. And that's a picture of me and Sam now talking about he's about to get married. So how far people come and how old I do feel when people tell me that now. But yeah, I think those memories, I say this young player, he's a little bit older now, but I still see Sam as the 9-year-old boy that I see walk through the doors all those years ago. And it's not just Sam. When I walk back in this building on my first day, the amount of people that are still at this football club that were here when I left, they may be doing different roles, some are still doing the same roles, is massive. And that's what we talk about this club being a family club. There's people that go way above and beyond doing their jobs here because of their association with the club and how long they've been doing it for. And yeah, we've got somebody like Pablo Hasham, who's now in our youth team working full time as the coach, who I used to teach at Oxford and Shiwa Valley College as a 16-year-old. And I had the pleasure, I loosely say pleasure, of seeing Pablo develop into a young man from 16 to 19 years old. So to now see him in the building, working with our young players and knowing the values he has as a person, there's some really proud moments like that, but also the relationships here, they're very special.
Let's end in business. We've picked out in the next 4 images, 4 games between then and really the run to the playoffs. picked out Burton win at home, Wigan at home, and then that 4-0 game against Fleetwood, which really started to kick things on. What did you take from your first few months in charge, and what games stand out for you?
Yeah, I think when I look back at the season, I think when you come in mid-season, it wasn't even mid-season, it was a third of the season through. You come in at a time, you come in by yourself as well, and I'm sure there was some eyebrows raised. You know, you're coming in from a league which probably nobody had really heard of. So there's probably a lot of questions raised, which again, like I said, in the last few jobs I've had, you have to deal with that and you get on with that. But it was trying to work out what had gone well here, because there was a lot of good work that had gone before. And of course then taking time to transition from what was and now what is, because what you don't want to do is throw out the good stuff, but what you need to do is transition through and try and get your ideas through. Obviously we had, it was a period of time where we were missing a lot of players, so it made it a bit more difficult. But when you're by yourself, it's you're trying to create new relationships with a squad of 28 players, a brand new staff group who have been excellent with me since I walked through the door. You're trying to get them an idea as to what you want to do and how you want to do it, but also their role in that, same as the players. And that takes time. And what I see was there was elements of it that started to really show through. Burton, as an example here, when I look at the 3-0 win at home to Burton, we started to see some really good moments of that. All the way through then to, from probably Port Vale onwards, that time that we've spent together, those relationships, that trust element, the understanding of individual roles within that team setting, and then the utilisation of each other's experiences to try and help us go further than maybe we could have. They've kind of all come together, and there's a lot more we want to do and need to do, but yeah, those moments on here, a combination of those things we just spoke through, have kind of got us to where we are right now.
We should now be getting on to, I think, 3 images now of Peterborough at home, 5-0, which is a game that feels like a change, not just within the club, but everything connected as well.
Yeah, come off the back of a couple of, you know, we'd won 4-0 away and won 4-0 at home against Fleetwood. And we went into this game, and I think, you know, Peterborough were a team at the time, or a team, sorry, that have done very well this season. They were at the top end of the table, and it was a case, we've shown what we want to do and how we want to do it over longer periods of time. But Peterborough was probably that test as, you know, the type of team that they are, that were fighting at the top end of the table, that have a very good set of players, that would offer us different challenges than maybe we'd faced in the previous games. Could we do it against that type of team? And I think anyone that kind of come to the games before, but also the atmosphere that day, it was a beautiful day. I've spoken about the cars being parked around the back of Greater Leeds from 12 o'clock onwards. There was just a sense and a feel in the air, even though we were missing our captain and Elliot Moore and Cam Brannigan. The team flew out the blocks and they played some wonderful football. And I think the crowd bounced off of the players and the players bounced off of the fans, and we ended up winning that game 5-0. And I think that if there was a moment to convince, whether it be the players or the staff or the fans, that we're on the right tracks, and we were hopefully setting up for a strong part or finish to the season, I'd like to think that was the moment.
The next one now should be an image of you at Exeter away, where we got to see the Des Buckingham fist pump. What are your memories of that day? Yeah, I was pushed forward by the players. It's not generally me. I think I've got stuck in doing it now, but yeah, it's a nice. You know what? We went into Exeter knowing we needed a win, and we knew there was a lot of different things that could happen that day. But we spoke about, and I spoke about the way we'd worked over the last 2 months. Almost comparing it to when you go for an exam or a test. If you've done your work and you've done your homework, if you will, before you go into a test, you're prepared as well as you possibly can. And when you get the test, ideally the questions you're asked, you've got the answers for because you've done the work. If you haven't done the work, you go in hoping that you don't get asked the questions that you're not prepared for, you're not ready for. And what I said to the players was, the last 2 months we've shown we have a real clear way on what we want to do, how we want to do it, and the controllables is what we have. If we stick true to that, you know, we have to deal with the uncontrollables. Exeter were going to throw at us that day, but the other stuff is irrelevant. We are clear on what we're doing, we know what we want to do, let's go out and try and perform as well as we can within it. We'll put ourselves in the best position, and
We did that day. The players stayed so focused on what we were trying to do. We come away with the result, and not only did we make the playoffs, but we ended up in 5th spot. So to be able to celebrate that with the players and our away fans at the time, and to that connection, I think, of those fist pumps was a nice way to wrap up the end of a regular season.
Yeah, and then playoffs, it was against Peterborough first at home, and then with the away game as well. And if you're just flicking through them, what comes to mind when you're looking at those photos?
The same. I think the one thing that jumps to me is the atmosphere that I spoke at the time, and when I reflect back, that's the Oxford United that I grew up. When we go back to that first picture at the Manor Ground, I spoke about the environment, the atmosphere that was created there. That was probably one of the few times, if not the best time, I've seen the Kassam Stadium as alive as that was. Walking out from the start of the game, all the way through the game to the end, that sense of we are Oxford United, this is who we are and this is what we're about, that was magic. And that really feeds in to kind of what we want to do and how we do it. And that's probably the one thing that jumps out to me on that game, without even talking about the football, was that real connection between what we do as a collective, fans included. And, you know, to be able to win that first game at home 1-0 put us into a good position going away to the second leg.
Yeah, and the second leg, it was nervy at times. We see some more pictures of you celebrating with your background team, with the fans as well. But that feeling at full time, I think you said after the game, was your proudest moment in football. Is that still the case when you think back on it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky. I've been to so many different places and we've had some successes. But I think winning trophies, it's a nice cherry on top. It's about how you do what you do, which is the most important thing to me. And we knew Peterborough would come at us that night, and they did. And I think I said afterwards, they threw the kitchen sink as well, but we stood up to it. You know, I think when we talk about playing a way of football, very often the other side of the game, the out-possession game, gets neglected, and the hard work, the desire, you can't question any of that night. All of that was tested, and the players really stood up to it. They were disciplined in their performances, and you could see the real pride in playing for our shirt and our club. And then the images at the end, I think we stayed on the pitch for about 15 or 20 minutes afterwards to celebrate with, I don't know how many fans should have been in that away end, but I'm told there may have been a few more in there for different reasons than they should have been. So, but yeah, to share that moment with this group, to share that moment with this staff, and to share that moment with those fans that have come down and supported us throughout all of that second game, despite us maybe not having as much of the ball as we did in the first game. You know, it's a long season. We've stuck together. We've got to kind of where we wanted to go, which was put ourselves within a game of now going up. And that was a really nice way of doing it.
I think that picture with the staff and the players, it encapsulates everything, because in it is the first team squad, the men's first team squad. It's all the staff that have worked so hard, and then behind it all is the supporters as well. And I think that just sums up everything that's got us to this point.
Like I said at the start, you can't do anything by yourself. You can't. The support staff, I don't want to say support staff, the staff that allow us to be as good as we can be on a day-to-day basis, and how high of a standard they operate at and how hard they work. They go above and beyond to get what we've got here and to put us in this position. The players do the same, but hopefully the players, because of that, get everything they need and potentially more because of it. And that's why I'm so proud to lead this team. It's the collective work of everyone involved that has got us to this point, and it's now the collective work of everyone that will be so important going into Saturday's game.
And Saturday's game, which is the last image, is at Wembley Stadium. Just your thoughts about leading Oxford United out there to see 36,000 fans in that west stand of Wembley. Try and sum up what that means to you. Yeah, well,
I've got a picture, or my dad's sent me a picture of me as a one-year-old boy back in 1986 when Oxford went and won the Milk Cup, which will never see the light of day. But I was last year supporting the club when we went up in 2010, so I was working at the club, but I was here as a fan supporting this club. So to be a local boy who literally grew up in Cowley across the road from the training ground here, has worked for a long time, got a lot of association with not just Oxford as a club, but Oxfordshire as a place where I've grown up. I know what this means to the people that are associated to this club. So to be able to be part of a representation to lead this group out and try and make not just obviously me, my family and friends proud, but people that are associated with this club proud of what they watch on that day will be a very special moment.
That's Buckingham's journey to Wembley. Hopefully we can end it on Saturday with a victory.
We'll do everything we possibly can to do that, but it's been a wonderful journey so far and one where we're really looking forward to building on.